very enthusiastic crowd here outside the Welsh Parliament building, the Senate building, in Cardiff Bay. A lot of people have waited for hours for this moment. They caught a glimpse briefly, clearly when the King and Queen went in earlier. My expectation though, Mark, is I don't think they are going to come down and talk to the crowd. Now, I might be wrong about that, and I can see there's a little movement from his bodyguards. I think he would probably like to do it, given the fact people have waited, but I'm not entirely sure it was on the itinerary. We're running a little bit behind, but he may well go down briefly, and I think he will to greet those supporters, many waving not just, of course, the Union flag, but the Welsh flag as well. There are some people, it must be said, booing in the background. I don't know if you can pick that up a little bit. But no, the King and Queen are going to go down and greet some members of the public, as I say, who've been gathered here for several hours. Interestingly, Mark, we talked about protests, didn't we, just before that live. When the King in his speech referred to Prince William and his new title as the Prince of Wales, one man did shout out, just one, but he shouted out that we did not want him here, and he was roundly told to pipe down by everyone else in the audience, frankly told to shut up, it must be said. But there we go, that is the King and Queen greeting members of the public here who've been gathered from kind of mid-morning, I would suggest. There are some protesters I can see holding up some placards, very few of them though, maybe about a dozen in total. But the King, in this attempt that we've seen in Belfast, in Edinburgh, and in London too, outside Buckingham Palace, an attempt to go and to meet members of the public in the different constituent parts of the UK. And let's be honest about this, we didn't see Queen Elizabeth do this when she ascended the throne back in 1952. They were very, very different times. But this is a concerted effort by the new King to have that special connection with his subjects.
I'll just pick up on what you were saying, that you did hear boos there as they emerged.
Yes, I mean, very few. I think there are about probably half a dozen protesters, certainly some people holding up pieces of paper. I'm stood behind them, so I couldn't quite hear what they say. But there was a chap who shouted out that he was not terribly pleased that Prince William was the new Prince of Wales. But as I say, I mean, the crowd is unsurprisingly overwhelmingly enthusiastic about this visit. I think it is important in our coverage, though, and there are people across this country who aren't necessarily terribly enthusiastic about monarchy, or maybe at least very indifferent about that, and that is clearly reflected here in Wales. We know that members of Plaid Cymru in the past have not necessarily been big fans of the royal family. They all want to see an independent Wales with a republic, with a president. Mark Drayford is not a monarchist, as you pointed out, the Labour leader who's also Wales's First Minister here. But on the whole, Wales and the people of Wales, through countless opinion polls, have showed that they are monarchists, that they are fans of the royal family. And that is reflected today in some of the crowds that we're seeing, not just here down at Cardiff Bay, but inevitably that we will also see in the centre of the city when he moves to the castle.
King Charles speaking to well-wishers, also shaking the hands of the well-wishers who are gathered here to meet the King.
Yeah, indeed, and we reflect, Glory, in many ways that, he spoke in Welsh, didn't he, for a minute at the start of that session, that motion of condolence. And that's pretty unprecedented. I'm not entirely sure we've ever heard a monarch, certainly in Wales, speaking Welsh before. Now, I think as Mark has been talking about, he did learn Welsh in a kind of crash course at Aberystwyth University back in 1969 ahead of his investiture. And he talked about his deep love for the nation and what an honour it was to be the Prince of Wales, and that Wales had a special place in the late Queen's heart. And again, he expressed his gratitude for those condolences offered today, saying that for all the years of her reign, the land of Wales could not have been closer to my mother's heart. And he expressed that thanks, as I said, in both English and in Wales. And he said that he passed this great title on to his son, whose love for Wales is made greater by all the years he spent here. And of course, Prince William did spend quite a lot of time over a decade ago, based in Anglesey. And the King added that we all share the deepest commitments to the welfare of the people of Wales. So there clearly is, unsurprisingly, from a man
that he's
who was the
just
Prince of
about to
Wales
meet someone with a
for-
wonderful daffodil on their head. Those of you familiar with the rugby games, of course, will see many people wearing the daffodil hats. That's wonderful that someone's taken the time and trouble to do that, including many kids there in the front,
I think they're
which is
school
great.
children.
Yeah.
I think that's because you can see from their school uniforms, for those people who are listening on radio, I think that's a group of school children with their teachers, and one, as Mark said, wearing a hat, like a daffodil.
Well,